So welcome back, guys. Another video on Season of Mastery, which pretty much seems like how it's going to be probably for the next few weeks, purely because, well, that's the biggest news at the moment, I would say, going on in Classic. But we've got a couple of juicy bits to talk about. So we've got achievements, potentially the achievement system. I personally think there's a good chance we could see the achievement system in Season of Mastery. Could be wrong, but we've definitely got some form of achievements anyway, so we'll talk about that. We've also got nerfs to the Rogue. We've already had sort of the Mage boost in and how that's going to work, and, well, how it's not going to work, but also now Rogue pickpocketing in BRD, that's being changed, nerfed, whatever you want to say. I mean, obviously this is probably to combat bots more than somebody who's actually going to sit there and farm, but still, I know a lot of rogues that used to sit in BRD, not botting, and actually pickpocketing, so it could have a negative effect on you as a rogue player who use it as a primary method of making gold. And we've also got some feedback from Blizzard about Molten Core and Onyxia and what, you know, their intent was when it came to difficulty, and how basically if you watched me stream it, then you know I was basically saying that I barely saw any difference, you know, as in the doubling the health and whatever else they done, restoring you know, old mechanics. The mechanics were never going to be so difficult that it wasn't manageable. All it was, the fights were just a little bit longer. Everything else was not that much different where you would start worrying. But we'll have a little look at that post that Blizzard put out as well. So let's jump straight in with, we'll look at the achievements first. So like you can see here, so just the latest news post on Wowhead. So Blizzard has just pushed Classic Season of Mastery patch 1.14.1, build 40,800, which with data mine new or changed spell ID. Some of these new or changed spells might leave clues to what they are about, which we speculate might have to do with the hardcore achievements. Changes to Princess Faradras in Moradon. That was a mouthful for some reason, but it is early still. And a potential crackdown on BRD pickpocketing. So achievements first. Classic. Survivor, Survivor of the Damned, Survivor of the Firelord, Survivor of the Old God, and Survivor of the Shadow Flame. Before we move on, I think we pretty much know what these are going to be. I think it's probably pretty safe to say Survivor is if you get to 60 without dying. Survivor of, what have we got? The Damned, that's probably KT. Survivor of the Firelord, Ragnaros. Survivor of the Old God, Cthulhu or Seafun, whatever you want to call him, and Survivor of the Shadow Flames, more than likely Nefarian. So it looks like there's already been hardcore achievements put in, or Soul of Iron achievements put in, to kill the end boss of all these raids, which is taking it a step further than the classic hardcore community's road to Ragnaros, obviously. But is any of these possible? I'm sure they will be. The thing that I'm a little bit skeptical about here is if you've just got a person who's got Soul of Iron and wants to get these achievements, you know, if they can go in a raid with 39 other people that are not got Soul of Iron on, then it'll be quite easy for people to cheese. I'm going to say cheese in it because you can more or less just stay out of the fights, or, you know, do the absolute minimum just and let the other 39 people do it. Whereas if you need a full group of 40 to achieve these, then that is an achievement. And I think that's what we need to see. We need to see a bit of separation between people who are doing Soul of Iron and people who are not. So we've spoke about this at lengths of how to sort of eliminate griefing, or at least reduce griefing, and we've spoke about, you know, a Soul of Iron only server, which ultimately for me, I think that would be the way to go. But other than that, it's if you've got Soul of Iron on, you're on your own layer. So, you know, you only see people with Soul of Iron, the Soul of Iron buff. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that cures it, purely because there'll still be people who don't care about Soul of Iron and they'll get the Soul of Iron buff just still to try and wipe your dungeon group or do whatever. And I think we're going to see a lot of trolling when it comes to Soul of Iron if it's not handled right. But anyway, if they're going to add achievements, or if these are achievements, or like I said in a very early video last week where we was talking about the first data mine spell IDs, you know, titles, it does make sense to add these as titles. And if they was to tie them to achievements, that means they could bring the achievement system in early, which I think on a seasonal server where you can't get everything done in 12 months that you might want to get done, having achievements in from the start absolutely makes sense. And I think this could hint at potentially us getting the achievement system, which, as I say, I would be all for. I mean, the achievement system alone would almost be enough for me to want to play Season of Mastery, purely because I like achievements. I like achievements when they come in Wrath. So uncategorized spells, I'm not going to go through all these, but there's some minor changes to multiple ones. If we just pick out some of the big ones, this is Blessing of Faradras, so as in Princess in Moradon. This is probably to make it so it's not soloable. Perished at level. This will be a way to probably track, you know, what your highest level hardcore or Soul of Iron character has been. We've got Thief that we're going to talk about in a little bit, and Teleport to Onyxia's Lair. Now that's quite an interesting one. So before we look at some of these in detail, I mean, Thief is the one that really sticks out, and obviously it's the one that Wowhead cover the most as well, because it looks like it's tied to BRD pickpocketing. Now, like I said at the start, there'll be a lot of rogues that legitimately use BRD as a way of making gold, you know, without botting. But obviously the fact is there's more bots probably in BRD pickpocketing than there are actual normal people doing it. But this is sort of what I was saying about the mage boosting, when the mage boosting has been now nerfed to the point where you can't boost, which is fine, which is in these popular places like Zul'Farrak, Moradon, and Strat. But there will be mages that use that as a legitimate gold farm, you know, without boosting people, just on their own, going in there, farming Mage Weave Cloth from the zombies in Zul'Farrak, for example. And, you know, removing these things, it can be punishing, unfortunately, to those that don't abuse it for any particular reason like this. There'll be people that use pickpocketing as a way of making gold. But now what it looks like it does with the thief buff is when too many have been pickpocketed, you can't pickpocket anymore. We'll look at what Wowhead said. Thief, given the recent string of thievery, enemies around you have stashed most of their belongings elsewhere. What they've basically said is, while Blessing of Faradras is speculated to reduce botting, the new thief spell might be following a similar path. Could this spell be a way for Blizzard to crack down on Blackrock Depth's pickpocket rogue bots? This might be a debuff after pickpocketing a specific number of enemies inside Blackrock Depths, which is probably exactly what I would say it is. You know, after, I don't know, 100 mobs have been pickpocketed, you know, this goes on, which in that case, as long as you can get, let's say, 12 minutes, if you can get 12 minutes of pickpocketing done before it resets, then you can go out, reset the instance, go in and do it again. But is that really going to stop bots? This is what I mean. It's really difficult to balance, you know, legitimate gold farms from what bots will abuse, because any legitimate gold farm, a bot would be able to physically do. You know, there's not much that you can't program a bot to do. So even if it was a different instance, let's say someone found a really good example actually is Razor from Crawl. Believe it or not, Razor from Crawl is a really good gold farm for like a protection paladin, which actually Dr. Kel was telling me about in a podcast over a year ago, a year and a half ago maybe. RFK could be, you know, the next gold farm. Same with SFK for the low level blues that drop in there. You know, they could be a great gold farm, but a bot could do that. You know, it's such low level. A bot could have a paladin that runs through and does that, for example. So you can't take away every legitimate farm just because a bot can utilize it, because otherwise we'll have no farms, will we? You know, I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to nerf fishing, someone who wants to sit and fish for 6 hours, because somebody can use a bot to fish. The root cause is bots. Get rid of those, and then everything else is all right. Other than, obviously, mage boosting, fair enough. If you don't want that in the game, you don't want that in the game. But when it comes to actually gold farms and legitimate gold farms, we can't just keep nerfing every single one because bots can do it. And there's not much more on here other than, like, Wowhead have basically said what I've said anyway. Survivor of the Firelord, Survivor of the Shadow Flame, all of that, you know, tied basically to the bosses of each instance, and then perished at level, yeah, records what level a player died at. We don't know this for fact. You know, this is all speculation, but these are data mined spell IDs or achievements. So we'll see where that goes. Let's now have a quick look at what Blizzard have said about the raid difficulty. So greetings. First, thank you everyone who hopped on Season of Mastery beta last week and helps us test our first adjustments to Molten Core and Onyxia. Now, I'm not going to read through all of this because you can probably read. I don't know. I'm guessing you can probably read. So the highlights of it basically are that they've said some of the mechanics are more impactful than others, but overall we suspected that the total impact of the changes would likely not be meaningfully felt by players of 2021 who have an enormous amount of experience in these raids. So the real basic changes that there was, which we've experienced already, obviously. Onyxia had a conflagrate / disorient effect on her fireball attack during the air phase, which, don't get me wrong, was quite annoying, but all it needed was healers on their game just to make sure that they top people off and you're not all stacked on top of each other. That's it. Golemag had an earthquake ability, and Ragnaros did a fire splash more frequently with a weekly timer to limit the number of attempts a group could make. So really, and also health was increased, obviously, which we will get to in a second. But those abilities, when you think about them, all they've actually done is made you need more healers. So you might take one extra healer, or your healers that you've already got will just have to heal more. You know, there's no real meaningful changes to the way you approach the boss. You still approach the boss in pretty much exactly the same way, but just need a little bit more output. So basically what they're saying is they started small. So the first round of the beta raid testing, they'd done a blanket 100% health buff and then restored these few mechanics. That was it. But as a result, with the next upcoming beta build, they're going to make some more significant adjustments to almost every encounter in Molten Core and Onyxia's Lair. So they've also gone on to say, basically, they don't intend for these to make the encounters feel different, like I said earlier, and they don't intend to make it so difficult that, you know, well-prepared raid groups have to wipe for days or weeks to progress on it. So they want you to be able to get through it, but they just want it to be a little bit more difficult than it was originally in 2019 when they launched WoW Classic. So you can just expect maybe Pugs having a little bit more of a challenge to do it, but your average sort of well-prepared, geared, consumable characters, you know, 40 of you going in, you shouldn't have a problem, and we might see less split runs maybe as well. But overall, they're making changes, and this really gives me a lot of hope for the future, and not for Season of Mastery. You know know I'm a massive Wrath fanboy, and I can't wait to start putting Wrath content out on the channel after Christmas. And I think with the changes that they're doing to Season of Mastery, if they take this same sort of approach into future expansions in Classic, we could have a really good time over the next 4 or 5 years with like sort of Wrath of the Lich King and even Cataclysm, if Cataclysm's done right. Let me know what you think of the changes in the comments anyway, guys. Obviously, all your support on the channel is much appreciated. Keep that support up by obviously liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.